Welcome to Small Talk by Sfarim Chatter. I'm Nachi Weinstein. On this episode of Small Talk, I'm going to be joined by Michal Horowitz, who is the author of the new book, Abled, Living with a Disability, a Torah Review, published by Mosaica Press. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Joseph Fried Professional Corporation and Fagler Rubinoff LLP, full-service law firm, Toronto, Ontario. Okay, Michal, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and pleasure to be here.
What can you tell me about the book?
Okay, so the book is, I think, a very unique work. It's a synthesis between really a book and a sefer, because in terms of a book, it's my story. It's a personal story, it's a memoir, but it's also very much an English language sefer. So I think it's very unique because you're combining personal story with Divrei Torah and Chidushay Torah woven throughout. Because why did I choose to write in this style, in this fashion? Because I've learned in my life through my own experiences that there is no story, whether it's a personal story or a national story, that's not found somewhere within the confines of Torah. And therefore, any personal story that we live really has to be framed through the lens of Torah, because it's important to remember that Torah means instruction. It doesn't mean Bible. It doesn't mean book, Chumash. It means instruction, Horah or Morah. And Torah is an instruction book for how we live. So anything that happens to us as individuals or as a nation has to go back to being framed through the lens of Torah. It's also written in a language and ideas that everyone of every background and every affiliation can understand, can relate to, can appreciate, learn from, and be inspired by. I teach, I literally teach from individuals who are 100 years old and even a little more, all the way down to guest lecturing in elementary schools. And I've learned that Torah does speak to every Jew, every point and time in their lives. And that's really how I try to write the book, that it should speak to anyone who picks it up to read it.
Okay, so you mentioned your background and that plays a role in the book. And reading the book, chapter 1, which you titled The Early Years, is quite fascinating, and it's your story. And I think it's important for you to say that because your story is important for those listening to understand this topic. And it's in the book. It's the whole first chapter, but I think it's important. So if you could tell the listener about your background and your story and how that played a role here.
Okay, so my background is an Ashkenazi Jewish woman. I was born in Toronto in 1976. I was the eldest grandchild to Holocaust survivors on both sides. All 4 of my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, which really, especially as I got older, has very, very much shaped who I am, my approach to life, how those Torah learning, life experiences. I went to the community elementary school in Toronto, Eitz Chaim. I went to Beis Yaakov High School. Then I went to Michal. I grew up in a very Zionistic home, a very strong love for Eretz Yisrael as well as Medinat Yisrael, strong values of tzedakah and giving to the klal, strong values of seeking the emes, what is the truth of Torah, strong values of closeness to family were always very important. We grew up in the B'nai Torah neighborhood, in the B'nai Torah Shul. I don't know if you're familiar with Rabbi Rafal Marcus Zatzal. Now, his father-in-law was Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik, who I actually quote in the Sefer. I was also very academic as a child, student, and teen. One of my siblings told me, which I did remember that when I was younger, I was the oldest of all the cousins also. All the kids, they used to call me teacher. It was a foreshadowing of what was coming. That's when I was a kid. I don't remember that. I always enjoyed learning. I excelled in my studies, and I think I grew up in a typical regular home 30 years, after the Shoah that I was born. And that's a little bit of my background and upbringing. Did I answer your question?
Partially. I think that's a good start. Before we get to, it's Abled, and the book is about living with a disability. So then this is where you really lay out your personal story and your loss of your hearing, which I think is laid out in the book. It's really very interesting and moving to read. And I think it's important for you to tell the listener here as well. Tell
me again, what did you ask me about my loss of hearing?
Yes.
So that's a dugma for your listeners of part of what my life is like. Don't edit that out. That's what it's like to be me, and that's what it's like to live with me. So imagine if you're communicating with me all the time. That was a very non-scripted, real example of my life and the degree of my hearing loss. I was born with normal hearing, thank God, which is why my speech and language is normal. Thank you, Hashem. When in the 1990-1991 school year, I was in ninth grade. We were living in Israel. My parents took a sabbatical year and we went to live in Jerusalem for the year. I was in an Israeli school and it was the year of the Gulf War. And I was having vertigo, dizzy spells, intense dizzy spells. I learned much later when I was in college for my degree in audiology that I was a kid, the balance system and the hearing system are in the same place in the inner ear. I had some severe vertigo spells. Like I remember sitting at the kitchen table in our Diran Yerushalayim. I was like overcome with intense dizziness. We went to a doctor. I don't remember. I remember the older doctor in Jerusalem. I don't remember. He said it's stress from the war because it was around the time of the Gulf War. Go home. Apparently, it wasn't stress from the war. It was an inner ear virus that affected my balance in the short term, Baruch Hashem, and my hearing in the long term. But I didn't realize right away that I was hearing impaired. I was a kid, and it wasn't the degree that it is now. Thank God. It would have been very hard for me to go through school. But I started to notice signs when I was with my friends, when I went places, that I go, oh, something's not right here. I didn't actually see an audiologist, and I wasn't aided till I was about 23 or 24 years old. So it was about a 10-year gap from when I had the inner ear virus until I actually started wearing hearing aids.
It was also fascinating. You mentioned there you are an audiologist, and it was fascinating to see that you're an audiologist, and then you had this hearing loss.
I know. So I started in New York University and then in Brooklyn College after I got married. My degree was in speech and hearing. It was a phenomenal, very excellent program at Brooklyn College. And then for my master's of all things, I went for a degree in audiology. I was very good at it because part of audiology is not only hearing testing, but we did counseling. It's called oral, AURAL, oral rehab. That's helping the patients learn how to communicate with the hearing loss, realistic expectations, tools to manage, fill in the blanks, how do they communicate more effectively. So it was something that was very matim. It was a good match for me, but then Hashem had other plans because I actually never practiced. Even though I graduated and went through all my schooling, I didn't actually practice as an audiologist.
So you mentioned that you started teaching, and then you also, we can mix that together with the book. The subtitle is Living with a Disability, a Torah View. And you say you teach, and the Torah's view on living with a disability, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
The Torah view on living with disabilities. So the Torah approach, I thought about this question a lot. I think about this question a lot. The Torah approach to dealing with people with disabilities and differences is really the same as the Torah approach to dealing with any other person. When the Torah tells us, Al tadines chavercha ad she'tegilim komo, don't judge your fellow till you stand in their place. It's not talking about only a person with disability. It's talking about anybody you meet and you see. To be patient and kind. To be with another person, imo anochi b'tzara. To be with someone else in their pain. No say ba'olim chaveira, shoulder the burden. The Torah is not to love other Jews. The Torah is not necessarily not only speaking about a person with disabilities. When you see another Jew, how should you treat them? However, when it comes to a person who, I'm going to use the term weaker, and I don't want to insult anyone as a disability because I myself have a severe hearing loss, but sometimes we have to use terms just to explain our thoughts. But when it comes to dealing with somebody who has a disability or is weaker, and I want to stress, it could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be psychological, it could be a mental health condition. There's no one, size fits all. And in fact, I wrote that very much in the beginning. The first thing that I wrote in the Sefer is an author's note after the Haskamus. The author's note, I write, no book on disabilities can be all-encompassing and include the vast range and types of disabilities, as the level of functioning from person to person may differ greatly. No book can encompass all of life's journeys, and therefore I recognize this book is about my own personal experience, but other may be similar, very similar, some to very different. But the Torah does expect that when it comes to people who are weaker, and I'm going to bring you some examples, we have a greater sensitivity, a greater kindness, and a greater empathy. Why? Because the Torah is aware that unfortunately in society, sometimes those people are more taken advantage of. And therefore, when the Torah frames misros related to those who are weaker, for example, in Parshas Mishpatim, Shemos Chaf Beis Chaf Aleph, Exodus 2:21. Should I be translating everything into, yeah? Okay. So, call Aman of Yashim Lo Sa'anin. So the Torah says you may not oppress any widow or any orphan. So it doesn't mean you only, so I could meet someone who's not a widow or orphan, I could oppress them. So Rashi tells us, quoting the Michal, who hadin l'chol adam. You shouldn't think that this is permission to oppress anybody. This is the law for every person you meet. However, Ela shadiber hakasuv behove. The Torah speaks about what is more common. Lefi shehem tishushe koach. They are of a weaker strength. V'davar metzui l'anosam. And it is more common common, that they may be taken advantage of by others. So we see that we are sternly warned in the Torah not to harm people who are already at some sort of disadvantage. And the Torah actually demands through mitzvah atzei d'oraisa that we respect those who are weaker, which also shows us that there's a side of man. We are told in Bereshis, lepetach chatas rovitz. Sin crouches at the door. That man is not always necessarily kind, patient, understanding, forgiving, and compassionate. We have the capability and the ability to work on ourselves to change any lack or negativity in how we view other people into something positive in our interaction with others. And I think it's important to point out that if you ask people in society at large today, what does to be holy mean? They might tell over a very different picture. My Lord Jonathan Sacks, Zichrono Livracha, tells over a story. He says it was going around in the age of psychedelic drugs and free loves when he was in the universities in the 60s. And he's talking about the pasuk from Devarim Lo B'Shamayim, Torah is not in the heavens. This is in Covenant and Conversation, Deuteronomy. And he says there was a guru, a famous guru who sat, on the hilltop of a mountain in the Far East. And there were lines of people waiting hours long to talk to him. And finally, one woman flies in from Brooklyn and she refuses to wait in line. She goes to the front of the line and they say, no, you have to wait. She says, no, I have to go in. I have to go. And she pushes her way to the front of the line. And she looks at the guru and she says, Marvin, enough already. Come home, listen to your mother. So I think what we have to understand is if you ask someone what Kedoshim to you means, the world at large might think it means abstinence, separation, go live on a mountain. That's not the Torah view of what Kedoshim to you means. If you look in Parshas Kedoshim, Vayikra Perek Yites, it is full of mitzvos that deal with, on the pshat at least, those who are at a disadvantage. Do not curse a deaf person. Don't put a stumbling block before a blind person. Don't corrupt justice. Don't show favoritism in judgment. Don't be a gossamonger. Don't stand by while your brother's blood is being shed. Don't hate your brother in your heart. Don't take revenge. Stand up before an elderly person. Give honor to an older person. One man in Vayikra Chav Hei, one man should not oppress his fellow. Verbal oppression, financial oppression. So we see that the Torah expects someone who is older, someone who is blind, someone who is weak, someone who is facing judgment, a widow or an orphan. There is something expected of Torah that we do have to have an extra sensitivity and an extra compassion in addition to what you would have for everybody else.
And those are some of the things that you talk about in the book. You also have a chapter in the book on Moshe's speech impediment. You have a chapter in the book about why can't blemish Kahanim serve. So a variety of different things, as well as you said, personal vignettes, your personal story in the book as well. So it's a sefer, a book, a memoir, all of that combined.
Yeah, it's all together. Did you ask me a question that I didn't hear?
Nope, that's all good.
I wanted to point out something beautiful because you said, what's the Torah view of disabilities? This comes from Yaram Chazoni in his book called The Dawn, which is his sefer book on Megillat Esther, the School of Esther. And he has an incredible idea there. And that is what he proposes, that every time the Torah puts a mitzvah with v'yareisa me Elokecha, thou shalt fear the Lord, it is in the context of someone who is already at a disadvantage or weak. There are many, many examples of this in the Chumash. So you should not work the Hebrew indentured servant with backbreaking labor, and you shall fear the Lord. You shall not oppress your fellow, verbal oppression, and you shall fear the Lord. So he says every time you see this phrase, it is in regard to morality and sensitivity. What does to be God-fearing mean? It means that if you see the humanity in every other person, therefore you will act in a moral fashion because you understand they were also created by God, and then you understand how to treat another person.
Who is your book meant for?
I'm going to answer. I don't know if all the authors you interview say this, but I really mean it. My book is meant for everybody. My book is meant for everybody. My book is meant for the young adult. I was talking to someone who told me that he said to me, it's so nice that you did a story plus Torah, because he says his kids read the story part and he read everything from it. It's meant for young to old. It's meant from, I don't like to use terms, but sometimes we just have to, for lack of a better expression, right wing to left wing, religious and not religious. All Hebrew terms are translated. It's written in a fashion that everyone and anyone can understand. It's not really only for people with disabilities at all. It's for people with disabilities. I've received so much feedback, Atlanta, Georgia, London, New York, Toronto, from people with disabilities themselves. Yes, how it has impacted them in their own lives, but it contains Torah insights and stories and lessons that are relevant for all of us. And the truth is, We all know somebody who has some sort of disability. There's no such thing. Everybody, as we go through life, like I said before, it could be financial, it could be familial, it could be emotional, it could be mental, it could be physical. There's no such thing as we go through life in some kind of, false utopia where everything is perfection, which doesn't even exist anyway. So it's really written for everybody to benefit from.
Finally, what are you trying to accomplish with the book?
So I want to share the beauty of Torah with others. That's in every venue in which I teach. I want people to realize that Torah encompasses every aspect of our lives. Torah is not something that stays in shul or in the Beit Midrash or in, a school. It's not something for the classroom. And then you come home to a different aspect of yourself. Torah is all inclusive for every aspect of our life. And reading through this book really demonstrates that. It also gives readers a window into the world of someone who's living with a severe hearing loss. I mean, we're having a short conversation here and you saw that it's difficult for me to communicate. It gives readers a window into the world of someone living with severe hearing loss and for people with other disabilities. Try and work on myself to be more patient, compassionate, less judgmental, and more understanding. And I hope that this book will speak to the hearts of others to increase sensitivity. And ultimately, if we increase Ahavas Yisrael, love of our fellow Jew, the book also touches a lot upon topics related to Eretz Yisrael and Medinat Yisrael. I include stories of the hostages, fallen soldiers, families who have been affected, increase Ahavas Eretz Yisrael, and increase Eretz Yisrael. We'll come to the purpose of a Jew in this world is to live a life of connection and meeting, both with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and with each other. And that's meaningful, thoughtful, fulfilling Jewish lives. And that's what I hope. I know it's a big answer for a short question. That's what I hope that the book will accomplish.
Okay. Thank you, Michal, for joining me. I will link in the show notes for where listeners can purchase it. If they're interested, mosaicpress.com. As always, you can use code CHATTER, CHATTER, for 15% off. It's also available in farm stores, Amazon, and so on. So I'll link in the show notes. And thank you, Michal, for joining me.